Fourth in Fantasy. This is part two of our latest 12 team 0.75 tight end premium dynasty mock draft. We ended in the fifth round on our last video, first part one, but we're going to continue with the sixth round in part two and later on. Do you agree where some of these players have went? Leave your comments on the most liked or your least liked spots, and let's go.
Hey, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't follow no script. I make my own lane. Got a spreadsheet mind and a red brass brain. Dynasty beats got that tape in my veins. While they drafting by names, I'm exposing their game. No cap. We study the craft like film room rats. Gyms in the fourth while they stuck in the past. It's levels to the dynasty. Keep or flex. From rookies to pros, we demanding respect. That's real. And I ain't never need clout for my clout to show. Just a mic I take and a team I grow. This ain't just picks, it's principle G. It's fourth in fantasy where you build your legacy.
With 10 toes down, and we stand on facts. Welcome back to Fourth and Fantasy. My name is Hancho, and this is my guy.
Siriaco, call me Rocco.
When we are your fantasy playbook to more championship wins, and Rocco, where are we the land of?
We're a fantasy football podcast for Dynasty Sickos by Dynasty Sickos. We're mocking the day.
We mocking the day. Everybody is welcome. Happy Sunday. It is the conference championship weekend where we have the Seahawks versus the LA Rams, and then we got the Patriots versus the Broncos against a backup fucking quarterback. We all wanted that for a conference championship, I guess, huh? But nevertheless, hopefully Sean Payton and Stidham,
Aaron
Stidham can get his
Stidham.
Stidham can do his thing and make it a cool show. With I think Patriots whoop ass today, but nevertheless, we'll see. Rocco, how are you feeling about the NFL playoffs right now? Who do you think? Who are your Super Bowl favorites?
I'm still going with the Rams. It's not looking so great for the Broncos. Man, that would have been a fantastic matchup if Nix could have stayed healthy. He even stayed after he broke the ankle. I guess he was on adrenaline, maybe some Toradol, but yeah, he's done till next year. He should be. Oh, he's frozen. He should be good. Should be good. Oh yeah, you're like. He should be good next year. But it absolutely fucking sucks, and we have a lot of Broncos fans in our collage array of. That's not a real word. In our group of discords. So it sucks to see them not getting a fair shot at this game. But Stidham has looked good in the past, so maybe he puts on a performance. But the bad part is the Broncos defense hasn't played up to the level it has in the first half of the season. So if they can't get consistent stops on May, who's just been awesome outside of throwing a million picks and a million fumbles in this last game against Houston, then it's going to be a long day for the Broncos. And as far as the Rams and Seahawks, I'm going with the Rams there. We seen the Rams possibly should have won both games. And then they fucked up with that last game and lost home field advantage. But I still think, top to bottom, they're a better team than the Seahawks, and they're one of the few teams that could actually consistently score against the Seahawks. So I'm going with them there. But both should be very interesting games.
Oh yeah, and we're gonna see what that Super Bowl do. I do have the Seahawks actually winning over the Rams. Not to say that I'm all in on Sam Darnold, but I think that defense that the Seahawks have is historic right now. They're whooping ass and they're taking names. But I would love for my boy Matthew Stafford to get another championship under his belt. Go dogs, you know how I'm feeling always over this side of the land. Always gonna root for my boys, no matter what.
I just can't see the Dick Hammer winning the championship.
But that would be crazy, right? Sam Darnold gets himself a Super Bowl before some of the more elite guys that we would think are ahead of him.
At that point, I guess I would have to capitulate that it was a bad move for the Vikings to let him go for JJ. but I'm
telling
not
you,
doing it yet. Not
not
doing
yet,
it yet.
not yet, baby. But as we said, this is part two of our recent mock draft that we have just completed the other day. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get things a little squared away, baby.
All right, so
Now,
we're starting in the sixth round, right?
yes, we are. And before let me go ahead and do this. There we go. Are you able to see my screen? Well,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, I can
So,
see it.
as
It's a
a
little small,
recap,
but I can see it.
oh, I got you then, my boy. Don't worry about all that. Let me make that. Oh no, hold up. Something popped up. There we go. That should be a little bit better. All right. As a recap, our boy Rocco over here went Jaden Daniels, Justin Jefferson, Brock Purdy, Brian Thomas, and Emeka Abuka in his first 5 rounds. Rocco, if you want to give a quick recap, days later, looking at this, do you still feel good on your first 5 rounds with this one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I feel great about it. I got studs at wide receiver, young studs at wide receiver. I've got two good quarterbacks. That's my optimal way to build right there.
Good recipe, a new recipe. Some people would say that they might have would a one running back somewhere in here, but I believe this. If I'm looking at our teams correctly, we had set it up as a start three, which once again that goes roster or I would say team construction really plays into that. If it's a start three wide receiver league, I'm most likely leaning towards grabbing myself a receiver in those early rounds. But if it's only a start two, then that's where I start to look at that running back selection. Do you kind of have that same type of process, Rocco?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
I
I guess it depends
usually
on what falls down to you.
I usually target quarterback, at least one quarterback, fairly early.
Mm,
I like to load up on receivers, but really it just depends on how the board falls. Like, if I'm sitting there at 1.8, yeah, one
mm,
point eight, and say a Bijan Robinson falls to me, then I may be forced to take Bijan. If I'm sitting there at 1.8 and um, like like I said in the last podcast, I probably, if I'd been paying more attention, I would have went Nakua there over Jaden Daniels. So I guess that would be a regret, and then I would probably have
hmm
and Jets.
No, I'm with you on that one, big dog. And where honestly, I like the way that you started off your draft. I'm still somebody who I think Jaden Daniels could end up bouncing back this year and put himself back into that top five conversation because he still gives you that rushing upside. He might not run as much. Honestly, I'll even take that back. I don't think this stops him from running the ball because when he got hurt, it's been more on freakish plays than anything, like his elbow getting messed up and things like that. So I still like Jaden Daniels. And one thing that you pointed to in our previous video in part one was how accurate that Jaden Daniels is. So I absolutely love him as a passer. I don't think he steps back as a quarterback because he can still play the quarterback position. And then you got Brian Thomas Jr. You got young guys who I think where you Justin Jefferson obviously he was he was everybody's wide receiver one. Would argue some people's wide receiver one that you can go against Chase or CD Lamb in the previous years. And then Brian Thomas Jr., if you still have hope in him, and no matter if he does get traded or stays with the Jaguars and turns things around, I think what we saw in his rookie year, yeah, he had a little bit of troubles in his sophomore year, but I think that can be corrected. I think there was certain things that happened in his personal life that kind of affected him a long year. So we'll see what can be changed going into his third year, which is very important for a young wide receiver. And then you got Amika Buka, who started off super hot, but then came out or ended off the year really, I won't say really low, but if you capitalized on his, it's almost like with Roma Dunze during part of the season where he was super hot. and people were selling off, able to capitalize on his performance, and then it kind of dwindled off. I was very happy to move off of Roma Dunze. I most likely wouldn't have moved off of Amika Ibuka even with the slump, just because of I really did love him coming out of Ohio State and his player profile. But I think you had a really good start for your first 5 rounds here. And then I went Lamar Jackson, Drake London, James Cook, AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry, King Henry, for my first 5 rounds in the draft. Honestly, I would say this is my first year where I'm starting to realize that, or I noticed in the mock draft that I have done, where depending on how the board fell to me, I've selected a running back in that particular spot. So Lamar Jackson, where I took him, is where I most likely, and Rocco's gonna laugh here, but I would have went and selected CD Lamb, right? But I was like, let me change things. Let me start off something a little different. Let me go with a Lamar Jackson, who I still really believe in, and with a new play caller coming in, I think can get him back into an MVP. Where I was kind of out on Todd. I know he was our previous Georgia Bulldogs offensive coordinator, but I kind of think the offense got stale by the end of it. So I'm happy he's gone. I'm still rooting for Lamar Jackson and very okay with selecting him where I am. Then Drake London, because CD Lamb went literally the spot ahead of me. I would have loved to double up and get him right there. But Drake London, I'm happy with him as well. Now, I will have to see how Tommy Reese is as an offensive play caller. We did move away from Zach Robinson, who I felt like left a lot on the bone. So we got to see what Drake. But I still love him. I think he's wide receiver one. He was fired up towards the end of the year because honestly, he should be getting double digit targets every week, right? They don't have a wide receiver two to adequately help him out or take attention off. Kyle Pitts came on towards the mid to later year. Shout out to him while Drake was hurt. So hopefully they can, or we got to see if Kyle Pitts is even back in Atlanta and who's going to be the quarterback. But hopefully Drake can bring it all in. And then who is turning into my favorite, once again, go dogs, James Cook. I absolutely love his game. The Buffalo Bills are having quite a bit of hard times finding an offensive coordinator who wants to, which is kind of crazy, right, Rocco? When you have an elite quarterback, you're having trouble finding an offensive play caller. That tells me one, either A, Josh, no one wants, not want to say no one, but Josh Allen or how he plays, no one wants to be part of that. Because kind of reminds me of the Philadelphia Eagles having trouble finding their play caller. People don't want to coach Jalen Hurts. Could we say the same thing for Josh Allen? I kind of think that's crazy. I thought the Buffalo Bills head coaching or play caller spot would be a location where most people would want. That doesn't seem to be the the case here. But I love me some James Cook, and I think in 2026 he's going to even continue as he was the rushing champion in 2025. And then AJ Brown. Me and Rocco have been, you can go and look back anytime that we talked about AJ Brown, it's never been about talent with him. We both consider him a top 10 talent in Dynasty, redraft, it don't matter. I think AJ Brown is a top 10 wide receiver in this NFL. The situation does matter, yes. We saw with Justin Jefferson how that played out. Most would have considered him in the previous years of him being wide receiver one. And that came back where you can't, talent can always get over that situation hump. Sometimes you get, and Justin Jefferson hurt a lot of people this year. So, but that was my first 5 rounds: Lamar Jackson, Drake London, James Cook, AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry. We'll get to uh, the rest of the draft here at the 6th round. Looking at it with Jared Goff, who kicked it off. L Hugh 01 picked Jared Goff. Then we went Cam Ward. I know that might have hurt Chev a little bit. I could have seen Chev picking Cam Ward there. And then he went with Baker May, Sam Darnold. We got T. Higgins, Harold Fannin Jr., Jalen Waddle, Marvin Harrison Jr., R.J. Harvey, Devontae Smith, Kyle Pitts, and Matthew Stafford, all to go in the 6th round. Rocco, when you're looking at that round right there, what picks really caught you off guard, or do you agree with where these guys went in the sixth round?
Um, yeah, I mean, taking Stafford in the sixth round, I mean, there's potential for him to retire after the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And even if he doesn't, he's in his late 30s, so that's probably not a direction I would have went in. You look at some of the picks that went after Travis Etienne, Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
There's some players there. And if I needed quarterback, which he did, I would have probably went with Malik Willis, who's young, has a lot of upside. And is going to get a new team. Bryce Young, who's kind of solidified himself as a nice QB2. JJ McCarthy, if you want some upside. So I probably wouldn't have gone in that direction. Um, you know, Marvin Harrison, I probably would have just took like anybody else there.
Mm,
But I can't really complain about most of it. You see a QB run right there at the beginning of the sixth.
yeah.
That's for the guys that didn't want to get left holding without. So you see those quarterbacks go off of there. But that's what's standing out to me.
Hey, when I start seeing those runs, and for the people, I know there's folks that think the same way. They're like, "Let me go get those elite, those elite, premium positions at running back, wide receiver. Quarterback is good. Like quarterback is definitely in superflex, especially is important, right? You always want to make sure you get your QB1 right, and then also have a good QB2 option. But sometimes I be playing that tough game where I like to wait a little bit just to see what players I can get. Where Matthew Stafford went, and they still went and got Travis Etienne, but they could have waited, and then they would have picked up a round and a half later. Well, he wouldn't have got all the way there, so it looks like he would have been left holding the bag. But
Actually, I'm tripping because he did take ETN because he had back to back picks. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, even a Kyron Williams, who I haven't been the biggest fan of, but I mean, he produces every year. So sooner or later, you got to give him credit. Especially when you're talking in the seventh round.
with I'm looking at Harold Fannin Jr. going at the in sixth round, six overall spot. The tight end premium is 0.75, so an overall 1.75 total for the tight ends position. And what we saw from him in his rookie year, do you feel comfortable and where if you look at it here, both Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland went in that early fourth round. Do you feel even better getting Harold Fannin Jr. in that sixth spot where you don't have to take Tyler Warren or Loveland early?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like once I've passed on those top guys, I'm probably looking to maybe take a tight end. In that eighth round area, you could have gotten a Kittle. Even later, you can get a Dallas Godare, Joe
Mm,
Dirt, however you want to say it. You could have got him even later. You got Jake Ferguson, who's not sexy, but he puts up
went in the
numbers
tenth
in
round.
tight end premium.
Mhm.
So even a Kittle, like I know on our Iced Up Pod we talked about, we probably wouldn't invest in him, but more news has come out recently from our guy Jeff Mueller, who's injury maestro, talking about his Achilles injury wasn't as bad as it could have been, and there's
Yeah.
some cutting edge technology where they can get him on the field. Maybe he'll be on pup to start, but he can get on the field this year. When we were thinking, this could be a career altering injury. So, yeah, those are some of the guys I would probably go with. But I mean, Harold Fannin's a stud. The problem is he's in Cleveland. That worries me a little bit. But I mean, when you produce like that as a rookie, he should be climbing the charts.
Yeah. I think one pick that is has me kind of raising my eyes a little bit, and I absolutely loved this player coming out of college is RJ Harvey at the sixth or the ninth overall in the sixth round, where We had he or Lentis, shout out to Lentis, good guy. Uh, Picked RJ Harvey over
Jose.
Travis Etienne, Barkley, Kyron Williams, Javante Williams, and even Cam Scatterbo, even with the injury. How do you feel about RJ Harvey going in 2026? Is he over guys like ETN, Barkley, Kyron Williams for you?
To me, he's like a poorer man's, and this is not a knock on him, but he's like a poorer man's Trevion Henderson.
Mhm,
Obviously he's got the explosives. They find ways. Sean Payton finds ways to use him and
mhm.
to utilize him to his strengths. But to me, he doesn't, at least at this point in his career, he doesn't seem like he sees the game like a three down back, and that's why they're using guys like Jaleel McLaughlin. Ever since J.K. Dobbins got hurt, because it seems like they don't trust him to move the chains and down and distances. Does that change next year? Maybe, but he's definitely got a lot of a learning curve to go. While the other guys have proven to be, guys that put up numbers, guys that can absorb a three down uh, workload. Even a guy like Cam Scatterbo, he got the only person that got more touches than him when he was healthy was CMC. So you got to follow those touches a little bit. So I think Harvey's a sexy name, and he did have double-digit touchdowns. And Jose is a Broncos fan, so I can understand reaching a little bit for your guy. But for me, I would have took the three down skill set stud. So maybe he's going with a productive struggle type build where
A
uh,
productive struggle.
productive struggle, yeah, yeah, where he's not going for the championship in the first year. Going to stack up some picks, and try to have like a super studded team. In year two, year three. But for me, if it was me, I like to win year one, so I would have probably gone with one of those more established studs.
With RJ Harvey, and just honestly, I'm starting, and I have to look a little bit further into the code, the logic in my head in a little bit. But we saw the same thing with, and he was also coming off an injury too, so I would like to point that out there. But where people graded or looked at Javante Williams as washed because of he wasn't able to have too much success on the ground, but he was pretty decent used through the air. We saw the same thing with RJ Harvey, where on the ground it didn't look sexy for a lot of the times. He either running into walls, and I'm starting to think that it might potentially be a schematic thing with the Broncos rather than a player thing. Yes, J.K. Dobbins does his thing from time to time, but I think it takes a particular back to be successful in a Sean Payton's offense. And we saw it with this year with Javante Williams with the Cowboys. He leads the Broncos. And for a good portion of the season,
Breaking up a little bit.
type of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You just went into like cyborg mode.
mm,
You're
gotta
good
get
now. I think it's like a
gotta get
connection or something.
yeah. It does, and it doesn't show that on my end, which is crazy. So I got to figure that out. But
If it
uh,
shows it on your end, tell me because it probably wouldn't show on my end. So uh, just keep it a buck.
I appreciate you, my boy, as always. But with RJ Harvey, I'm right there with Rocco. I would have probably went Barkley over RJ Harvey. I would have went ETN. Even though I don't like Kyron Williams, I probably would go Kyron Williams. And of course, I'm going Javante Williams over RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey is going to be 26 soon as well, I believe, as a older prospect, and he just finished his rookie year. So I'm going those other guys, man.
I'm going to
But
counterpoint with that. RJ Harvey wasn't known for his vision coming in, and he wasn't known as a he was more of an explosive guy, and he tries to bounce everything. Kind of like Kenneth Walker, especially early in his career. So I think Sean Payton's using him, maximizing his ability. And just to talk about his running acumen, he is 47th in run grade on PFF. So take that for what you will, but the film watchers, they're not very much in on him.
Yeah, it could be definitely be improved. Now that we're looking at this seventh round, I'm I think it's very peculiar because when I'm looking at these wide receivers that went off the board per se, I think we you start to look at guys that aren't your wide receiver ones, but they could be your solid wide receiver twos if you get that point. So James, well, just in the seventh round, we had Travis Etienne, then we got Jameson Williams, who people were looking to have a bigger year, to have a true breakout. It didn't kind of turn that way,
But
but
he had a damn good year. He was over a
yeah,
thousand yards. He was a league winner in the second half. The problem was if you needed him in the first half, you got shit.
I still don't, and maybe he's developing towards that, but I just still don't see him as the PPR guy, where you you don't expect volume out of him right now, and then you have people talking about Laporta is going to be coming back on scene with their new offensive coordinator hire, and him being the tight end guru. What does that mean for Jameson Williams? That's what pops in my head, but Jameson Williams. Then we have Barkley, Strange, Kyron Williams, Javante Williams, Travis Hunter, which I don't know how to feel about that one because I don't know how to feel about Travis Hunter right now in the seventh round, or him as a wide receiver, or him for fantasy goodness. Where we got to see how much he plays on defense. We got to see if he can even stay fucking healthy. Okay, but then we got Cam Scatterbo, Luther Burden, Tootin, Pierce, and Pittman to end out the seventh round. The Colts wide receivers. I think my favorite one that ended up having bigger value than people anticipated in the 2025 season was Pierce. He ended up, and for a person who went over 1,000 yards, under 50 catches, oh my goodness, this man. Well, obviously he's been we all known as him as a deep threat for the Colts, but I think he shown or showed more completeness to his overall game. Even when Daniel Jones went out, if I'm him, if I'm Alec Pierce, if I'm a fantasy owner of Alec Pierce, I'm kind of hoping he dips. I'm hoping that he goes to another team that gets him more of the passes and can see what happens. Is what you saw from Alec Pierce in 2025, Rocco? Do you feel comfortable with getting him at 7-11, where you have guys like Addison that went off the board early? Then you got Brandon Ayuk, depending on how you feel about him, Michael Wilson, Sutton. Obviously, we all know how you feel about Metcalf, so I won't be asked you about that boy. And then Parker Washington. How do you feel about Travis Hunter right there? Or not Travis Hunter, but how do you feel about Pierce going into 2026?
I mean, he was awesome in 2025. I mean, um, to be one, he was a super value on that team because coming into the season, we knew what Pittman was about. A lot of people had Josh Downs as a breakout candidate. Um, we know what JT is, but
Yeah.
for him to emerge as possibly the number one wide receiver on that team, I think they're gonna have to. I think they're gonna have to bring him back. The guy who could be the odd man out could be Pittman, who could be a trade candidate. He's a very professional, solid wide receiver. Not
Mhm.
spectacular, but he's definitely a guy that you need to move the sticks. So there's a lot of teams I think that would be in on Michael Pittman if he became available. But Pierce, I mean, if he has another jump from where he was year one to year two to this last year, I mean, we could be talking about a high end wide receiver too. So he's a guy that I'm trying to add sneakily. in some of these early drafts before his price gets moved up. Uh,
Hmm.
in the late seventh, I think that's a great value.
I think that's smash right there, especially if he goes to, let's say, 49ers team who needs a wide receiver when Brandon Ayuk leaves. We haven't seen much from Pearsall. We have seen, I say, flashes from Pearsall, but when you come to health and then you look at some Cowing, another promising wide receiver that I was hoping that would come into his own, can't stay healthy. So, and then you got Juwan Jennings, who, I mean, he's cool, but then he disappears as well. So he's not somebody who I feel like you can confidently count as your wide receiver too. So Alec Pierce still is very much in his prime and still is getting better. I still think there's another part of his game that he can add to. So if he goes to a better situation, like I said, let's go with the San Francisco 49ers. I'm rolling with that one for sure, for sure. And then Michael Pittman is another guy who, honestly, if we're looking at it, Pierce could be the guy who ends up staying, and Pittman, like you suggested, could be the one shipped out. But I'm curious to see Michael Pittman. If health wise, I'm curious to see him on a different team. I don't know about that quarterback situation in 2026. Hopefully, we got to see what goes on to see how they feel about Riley, see how they feel about Anthony Richardson. Honestly, I want to see Anthony Richardson on a different team just for just for one fantasy and I think he just needs a new scenery. Let him let be with an organization that doesn't criticize him, doesn't he can just have a fresh start. So that seventh round was pretty solid. I think if we're looking at top value, I would say Luther Burden can end up being something bigger if DJ Moore gets traded. I think we're looking at that young trio or that young core that they have in Chicago with Caleb, with Loveland, with Luther Burden. We got to see what happens with Roma Dunze, right? I'm not ready to jump ship on Roma Dunze, but brother, does he need to get his shit corrected, and he needs to get that shit corrected very soon. Very
Luther
soon.
Burden is obviously the wide receiver one there. He had the highest yards per route run, and he profiles as a guy that could be a target earner. If you want to call Loveland the wide receiver one or the number one in the passing game, I'm not going to fight you on that, but it's obviously to me, it's Burden and Loveland are the stars of the show there.
Sweet spot.
And was that?
Sweet spot for Burden to go right at that spot, or you think that's like where you have to select them, or you think you can potentially wait another round to get you a Burden?
I probably would. I could probably be convinced to take him over Waddle, Harrison, Smith, um, Jamison Williams. Considering the Lions guys are telling me he's due for a down season. I don't know if I buy it yet, but I mean that's they're telling me. So yeah, I probably would have went. I would have definitely had to think about going Burden after Higgins went off the board. So yeah, I think he's a steal right there. I really liked all of the running backs that went in this round. To get
Agreed.
studs at running back in the seventh round, that's a smash there. Um, the most interesting pick for me is Bayshaw Tootin. Um, it feels early to me, but
My boy
also
Chef.
when Chev makes a pick, I go from slouch to hmm,
Mm.
hmm,
Mm.
hmm. What does Chev know here?
Yeah.
Let me do a little more research. I feel like he could have got him, in the next three rounds, but it seems like a statement to take Tootin right there. So that's the interesting picks for me in this round.
In the same round as Travis Etienne, nevertheless, but maybe Chev knows something in the tea leaves, and Travis Etienne might not be with the Jacksonville Jaguars next year. That'd be a very, very interesting take after the year he just had. But Chev is shout out to our boy Chev, man. Sometimes and what takes sometimes you're just a year early. Sometimes you're never wrong. You're just early. So I did like the 7 rounds was a sweet spot for the running backs. I think you got a capable hell. Barkley could return as RB1 next year with a new offensive play caller. So you just never know. I really like these guys. I'm not a big Kyron Williams fan, but in the 7th round, and if you're needing a running back, go for it. Looks like Austin already had at that time Jonathan Taylor and CMC, and he pairs that with Kyron Williams. You're looking at 3 high volume running backs right there for your fantasy team. Kyron Williams could very much be displaced by next year with Corum. But I digress. I digress. I digress. Now let's move on to that 8th round, where we have Dalton Kincaid that starts us off. Jordan Addison, who honestly I feel like he's fallen off, and I won't say fallen off as talent wise, but where his ADP is and compared to last year, and just the overall Minnesota offense and how people felt about JJ. Addison has fallen a bit because, and I feel like last year Addison would have had a Pittman, Addison would have had a Pierce, he would have had a Burden, he would have been ahead of the Hunters, the Jameson Williams in previous years. So to see him fall all the way to the 8th round tells me one, people are very much down on the Minnesota offense. They are very much down on the quarterback situation. I'm not sure how you feel about JJ Rocco if he can turn it around or if them boys needed to start looking a different direction right now. But it seems like people don't have any type of faith in that boy JJ right now. Is Addison in the 8th round going to be this year's value picks?
Um, I would rather go a different direction. I have Addison on teams, and I love the talent. But I mean, you can't look the other way when Justin Jefferson has a down season. I mean, what's going to happen to the number two in that on that team?
Mm,
I still have a lot of faith in JJ McCarthy, but maybe it doesn't happen right away. Um, I don't see them going in a different direction unless um, my phone it gives me these Google alerts, which I think is like AI slop, and they were saying that and sometimes there's like a kernel of truth there, but most of the time it's bullshit. They said that the Vikings were preparing a massive offer for Joe Burrow,
mm.
and if that happens, what happens to Jordan Addison? It's fucking, it's sexy time explosion, like
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
Chef said on a recent episode. Shout out to Borat. But right now, I feel like I would go with Addison, but I would be more looking at the double digit rounds. And I think in some drafts he will slide that far.
Mhm.
But for me, I think I would have went with maybe a Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin,
Michael Wilson over Jordan
Watson
Addison.
Gordon. Hmm.
They said Michael Wilson had the most, or he was like top 3 for the most garbage time for receivers. Uh,
Yeah, it's hard for me to get a feel on Wilson. He feels like more of a sell to me because he's not the number one. We have a new coaching staff coming in, so will they prioritize trying to uplift the highly drafted Marvin Harrison? And he becomes the number three there in a questionable offense. So I do like the talent. I'm not sure about the 2026 utility. It could possibly not be what you expect there. So I think I would go a different direction there. But I think I'm going to maybe even a different position than Addison right there. Maybe I go with a George Kittle, grab one of those quarterbacks that went. There's some other options that I think that I would go in that portion of the draft.
mhm. 'Cause when you're looking at it, I mean, hey, Chev, we can grab Brandon Ayuk, and from what the more that I read about what happened between him and the 49ers is wild. Like he stopped returning their calls. They haven't
He
heard
left
from
them
him.
on red.
Left them on red, baby. So
Goes,
it's
he goes to their hoes.
ghosted, man. So it's like I've never seen a player do that, yo. That's it's hilarious, crazy. So I don't know how to feel about Brandon Ayuk. Does he want to play football? Does he want to play in still in the NFL? Does he just want to get the hell out of San Francisco so he can play with his best friend in Washington, aka Jaden Daniels? I think. I mean, if he's healthy, if he's good to go, Ayuk could be one of the bounce back players of next year, just because of how low technically he is right now. To still be going in the eighth round, I honestly think he could go even lower in some startup drafts. Really, he could be in that double digit as well. And then you have, go ahead.
I know one thing with Ayuk is if he plays in 2026, God damn it, he should be 100% healthy at this point.
At this point, you missed the whole full year,
Bro,
player.
if you're fucking healthy at this point, just give it up. Go work at Walmart or what? I mean, you not work at Walmart because you got a $30 million contract. Well, it's been thrown in the garbage, but you did get some money at some point with that contract.
It's crazy, man. And then we have Bryce Young go off the board. Malik Willis in the eighth round. I think that's going to be one of the most undervalued quarterbacks, to be honest with you. If he actually ends up going to the Miami Dolphins, I know. They just hired Bobby Slowick.
They don't have the
The
money for it.
Hey, if they can find it, open that playbook, open that checkbook up, man, because they gonna need something. But I
Maybe if
do
they get
like.
Loomis to do the books for him, he could he could do the funny money thing he does.
Hey, they hit Loomis up and get some tax write offs. But I
Hey,
like
we'll trade him Loomis for a first now.
now, Rocco. You said this countless times in Discords, our Discord, other people's Discords, where you've acquired, or how you acquired Malik Willis has been basically off of waiver wires, and that's how I acquired me some pieces of some Willis as well, off of waiver wires, where I paid the free 99 or some $10 of fab or $15 of fab for him to be on my team. But I think that's going to be one of the guys that you look back and was like, damn, I wish I would have paid attention this weekend on the waivers to where I could have picked me up a solid quarterback. JJ goes in the same round as Jordan Addison, where once again he went after, and we don't even know if Malik Willis is a starter. He's not anybody's starter quarterback right now. JJ is on paper, and he still goes after a Malik Willis. He still goes after a Bryce Young. That tells you where people feel about JJ right now. And then we got Michael Wilson goes off the board, George Kittle, Sutton, Metcalf, Woody Marks, and then Parker Washington, who I think is a good value in Jacksonville. I The Parker Washington tax is the brick has definitely went up to where you got BTJ, you have Jacoby Myers, you have a Strange, you have a Parker Washington, who very much did show his worth, right? And then if you're looking at the rest of the guys that went after him, like the Terry McLaurin, a Jalen Coker, I it's hard for me to project. Hell, even a Christian Watson who gave you some really solid weeks in towards the later year, coming back from injury, mid to late of the year. I think the only least one I like, and shout out to our boy Addy as always, is just DK Metcalf, where one he was you could blame it on Arthur Smith, you could blame it just on the overall offense, you could blame it. I mean, Aaron Rodgers looked suitable. He wasn't the worst quarterback last year, so I won't I won't hit Metcalf too hard. But what he came in to replace, which was a George Pickens, didn't even amount to what George Pickens was able to do in 2025 with the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, better situation, but also showed the true talent. The Ferrari that was being wasted in the garage, being driven like it was a Toyota Camry. That is what George Pickens was. DK Metcalf is probably my least favorite just because of where you have to pick him isn't where his production is giving, unless things change and he goes along that way. But that kind of always been his career though. It's just it's always left you wanting more from DK Metcalf, especially him being the overall physical specimen of what he is and trying to get better at your craft. I just don't like DK Metcalf. Not to say he's a bad person, crash out twin, hello, but Yeah, DK Metcalf probably my least like pick of that round of the
I,
eighth
I
round.
think I think DK. I think DK. If you want him to be like your wide receiver three, and you're not expecting wide receiver two, God forbid you're expecting wide receiver one numbers.
Mm,
I don't think it's the worst thing. But yeah, like he's leaving you fantasy wanting. Like a guy that looks like that, who's like even bigger and more rocked up than AJ Brown. He should be just mossing people everywhere, and
mhm.
it's just the fact that he disappears for stretches at a time. He's not very good at football things, um, like uh, keeping himself in bounds, consistent effort. Um, so that that is, I think, what rubs people the wrong way. Like
For
this
sure.
guy should be in that top tier, upper echelon class. I think he very early on had like a 13 or 1400 yard season and hasn't touched that since. So, a guy that's kind of digressed over time.
Yep.
And last year, he was basically the only receiving weapon in Pittsburgh and still couldn't put up
And
those huge numbers. So, if I got him in one team and he's basically the wide receiver three on that team, I don't mind it because he will pop off from time to time. But if you need consistent production, it's probably not going to happen. And as far as this round, I think we already touched on Kittle, so no need to go there again. I think the noteworthy part of this round are the quarterbacks.
mhm.
Bryce Young, Malik Willis, and J.J. McCarthy, each in like you know different phases of their career, which is funny that they go back to back to back. You got Bryce Young, who established himself as the Carolina Pandas quarterback for the next few years, if not longer. Had good moments in the playoffs.
Yep.
You got Malik Willis. Like, let's say Malik Willis, and I know this is probably not going to happen, but just follow me for a second.
I'm following, baby.
We heard all season that the Jets were so in on Mendoza. They love Mendoza. They were trying to tank for Mendoza. That's why they traded their whole team. And the Raiders still got the number one pick. Just imagine for a second
Hmm.
the Jets give up the farm for Mendoza because they love Mendoza so much. Maybe they even give up their 2027 first, which is nuts. But if they love Mendoza enough, I could see them doing some crazy shit. And they got a bunch of firsts. So if they want to give up both of their firsts to go up just one spot for Mendoza, the Raiders probably can't turn that down unless they love Mendoza equally.
I see where you're going.
So
See where you're
they
going with
they
this.
swap these picks. Las Vegas sets them up nicely with a whole, you know, a whole chest full of
A
first
death hole.
picks and set up a super haul. And then instead of going Mendoza, Las Vegas uses up the second most cap space in the league to get Malik Willis. And now Malik Willis is playing with Ashton Genty. He's got Brock Bowers. Maybe they use that extra first round pick possibly on Carnell Tate, Makai Lemon, somebody of that ilk. Now that offense is looking studly, and they bring in Malik Willis with all that money they got. How high does Malik Willis go then? Now you might be talking about a top four, top five startup pick. So that's a big stretch, but I can see a world where it happens.
Rocco
And
the GM in the house.
how I feel about McCarthy to get a starting quarterback in the eighth. To get a starting quarterback in the eighth at all, I think is great value. So, kudos to them. I think those are the best three picks in this round.
And now we're at our last two rounds of our latest Dynasty mock draft 1.75 tight end premium. We're going to cut to a quick break to Lead Champ, where you could win a free NFL jersey by being the number one ranker every week. We got this week, and we got Super Bowl. weekend. I believe it's on the weekend. I had to think about that one. Only 2 more weeks to play, man. Well, we got to tap into Addy to see if they what other contests that they're going to have. But we also have some other contests ending as well. Where they had a year long ranking go. I believe Rocco, you had played it. You're playing in that one to see how that one ends up. So tap in with
Won that
Nick and win yourself a free NFL jersey. I was just wearing my George Pickens jersey just last week. Rocco was displaying his Alvin Kamara jersey, which we'll end up getting into in the later rounds and discuss how we feel about him in 2026. But here is League Champ, and we'll be right back. And we are back for some fantasy, your fantasy playbook to more championship wins. I am Hancho, and this is my guy.
Rocco.
And we're going to continue this thing, baby. We're going over our mock draft that we completed or I believe it was actually yesterday that or 2 days ago that the last pick came in. And once again, shout out to everybody that joined this mock draft. We have a lot more to come. I do want to try more teams. This one was a 12 team, but I do want to do 14 team, 16 team. I want to get better prepared for those. I think that's where you get better at drafting the 12 teams. Yes, because it's just it's generic. It's a very normal size league. But when you get into those 14 and those 16s, the those the 16 overall or those second rounds isn't a true second round, right? Or the end of the first round would be like a early second. So you got to start thinking of guys that could go off the board early or be at other spots that you don't really think about. So looking at this, um, looking at the ninth round that we're now looking at. So we moved past Parker Washington, ending off the eighth. Now we got Jonathan Brooks. Rocco, I'm going to ask you about this because Jonathan Brooks tore his ACL, so he missed all of last year, right? He missed all of last year, did not play, which a lot of fantasy managers, when he got hurt the year prior, kind of thought would happen. Now in 2026, he should be about a year and a half removed away from the injury, so the knee should be stronger. And depending on how you felt about him as a prospect coming in out of the draft, to now there's inklings to where Rico Dowdle could be out of town. They're not bringing him back because they do like where Jonathan Brooks is in his recovery. Is Jonathan Brooks somebody who you're trying to acquire right now? And are you spending a nine round pick on him in startups?
Not in the ninth. Not in the ninth. Um, you got Terry McLaurin. You got Christian Watson. Even a guy like Kyle Monangai, who showed himself to be like really pretty good, and for him to go over Chuba Hubbard, to me it's a bit of a reach. To me, it seems like a statement pick, just kind of showing like this guy really believes in Brooks.
Mm,
Um, and I see where he's going with it because, uh, you know, based on how Rico Dowdle talked at the end of the season, he's probably not back. Uh, not everybody believes in Chuba Hubbard, even though he's been good when healthy.
mm,
And Brooks was drafted to be like that number one there. So, you know, I think he's kind of projecting him to kind of take over that backfield, and the Pandas have shown that they have a good running scheme. Their running backs have been pretty successful when in there. So, you look at him as the most talented guy there. So, I see the vision. I see where he's going with it. For me, I would have probably went with an established player there and tried to sneak Brooks in the double digit rounds, but I don't have a big problem with it. I would have went another direction though.
Yeah, Brooks is. I've tried. I very much have in this last 2 weeks since we heard about Dave Canales and how they feel about Brooks and where he is in his recovery. I very much have sent out third rounders to see what the air is on Brooks. People ain't going Rocco. People ain't going for no third. They want. They said I invested too much. I'm going one. I'm holding, or it's going to have to be a second rounder, and I don't feel comfortable sending out a second rounder for no fucking Jonathan Brooks. It's just not happening. It's just not how I get down. When we're looking at these guys, he went ahead of someone like David Montgomery, who has been talked about him being moved out of Detroit. Honestly, I think that's a better move for David Montgomery and what he could be if he ends up in a, let's say he ends up as a lead role for, trying to think of a team that could use a running back right now. The Cardinals. Hell, what if he ends up with the Cardinals? Now, I think he would be perfect actually for the Arizona Cardinals. But now you're looking at it for a running back who went in the 10 and who stays healthy for the majority of the time. You don't really talk about how uh, him being out of commission for the most part. But it depends on how, once again, how you feel about Jonathan Brooks, how you feel about him or felt about him coming out of the draft. If you were one of the people who took him in the first, you're probably holding. You can't think of a reason to come off him for a third. Unlike I've seen some people do with Caleb Williams, even though they selected him in the first, I have very much acquired him for basically almost nothing or thirds or just as a throw in on some drafts, right? So if yeah, I'm gonna ask you a question on this one. Do you feel more confident about Jonathan Brooks or do you feel more confident about Caleb Johnson?
Mm, Probably Brooks because the team seems to like him more.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Johnson, the way he basically got no touches, and there's a new there's a new sheriff coming into town, so they may, you know, we just don't know, what exactly happened there to where he got like basically no touches.
Yeah,
He was inactive most game days. It makes me worry about Caleb Johnson. I'm not saying that I wouldn't sneak him onto rosters, and if I can get him for a third, I'm probably making those offers. But Brooks just seems like he has more commitment from the actual team, so I'm probably going with Brooks because Brooks wasn't benched. He wasn't
he loses
the
job.
team didn't believe he got he was hurt. So if he can become healthy, we kind of saw just a little bit of his upside,
Mm.
uh, basically in those couple games he played.
Yep.
We saw a little bit, and then he got immediately hurt. So um, I probably go Brooks, but I wouldn't argue too much if you went the other way as well with Caleb.
Yeah, I will say Brooks has a clearer path to 1A to be the starter in the Carolina Panthers. Let's say Chuba, I think, stays for another 2. If Jonathan Brooks, health wise, stays up to par, he can end up being a cheaper option. And then when it comes time to resign him, since he has been hurt, maybe he takes a less of a contract, right? So I won't fight nobody on that, how they feel about Jonathan Brooks right there. But then looking at the rest of the ninth round, Michael Penix, Terry McLaurin, Jalen Coker, who I think will rise. He had an amazing playoff run for Bryce Young. I'm, I think one that almost very much, if not those Xavier Leggett into a backwood. But I digress. Then we got Shador Sanders, Kyle Monangai, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard, Jalen Warren, and Jacoby Myers. Rocco, Alvin Kamara. He is over 30, but he is someone who I feel like even though he might not be Alvin Kamara of who we a fantasy, prime Alvin AK that was tearing up 4 5 touchdowns in one game on Christmas type shit. But I still feel like he can play in the NFL. I don't think he's washed. I don't get that feeling from Alvin Kamara. I just think he was very much banged up last year. Is he someone who you think can still add some value to your team in the later rounds if you're needing a RB3 or a flex spot?
Uh, yeah, I mean, for me, Alvin Kamara, he is like one of those guys we talk about. You know, when everybody's out on guys that have been studs throughout their entire career,
Mhm,
and the price drops to ninth round, you know, mid late ninth round. That's when I'm going to kind of jump back in. He's one of my early candidates to be the CMC of 2026. And when I say CMC, I don't. I'm not saying that he's going to be the RB1. Not probably not even a top five running back, but I think he can be a RB1. You know, low end. Because I feel like Spencer Rattler. You know, he's a good thrower of the football, but to me, it didn't seem like he was a guy that liked to check down, especially in Kellen Moore's offense.
mhm,
It seemed to me like he would kind of just like take off and run when the first read or the second read wasn't open. And you know, Alvin Kamara should always be, you know, should be targeted. You know, when those first reads aren't open, they should be setting up dump offs for Alvin Kamara, and he
mhm.
just didn't kind of seem right the whole year. Um, but he basically didn't play the second half of the season. He should be 100% come week 1 in 2026. He is going to be 31 before the start of next season, so he's getting a little long in the tooth. Um, but I don't think they're going to make him a between the tackles grinder. He's going to be more of the third down back. He's going to be used in the passing game, and I
Mhm.
think that he still has some run left in him. So if I can get him in the ninth round, I feel pretty comfortable getting him as my RB2. You know, in a build where I got studly wide receivers. I got really good QB room. Um, to get Alvin Kamara, you know, late in the ninth round, I think he could absolutely be a league winner. So yeah, I am back in on Alvin Kamara. I know before the
Yeah.
start of last season, I told y'all I was out. Then y'all looked at me crazy. You and Chev looked at me kind of crazy, and I said, I don't trust this offense.
Mhm.
This is a brand new offense than we've run in over 15 years. And I'm not sure I trust Spencer Rattler. And look, Alvin Kamara had his first worst year. So now that everybody's out, I'm jumping back into the Alvin Kamara business.
Yeah, I think another aspect of the Alvin Kamara type of situation where a lot of teams just wasn't afraid of Spencer Rattler. You wasn't afraid of the arm. You wasn't afraid of him on the ground. You just wasn't afraid of him. Like he was a cool quarterback to get you what you needed, but there was nothing about his game that really kind of scared you. Whereas Tyler Shough, he's been known to or been he has had the want to throw the ball downfield, and then he's also a problem with his feet as well. So I think that adds another wrinkle to what more of what Tyler Shough can do for the offense than what Spencer Rattler could have done. So I think with the whole off season, hopefully things look better in New Orleans and with Alvin Kamara and that the young guys that they have for that offense. And then looking at the rest of the guys like DeAndre Swift, it depends on if you think he's still going to be the starting running back for Chicago in 2026. I still think he will, but a lot of people thought he was going to get replaced when this year with Ashton Genty, they was like Chicago going to be the one who select him. I'm still, you know how I feel about my dogs. I'm never going to go against my boys. I have to see how Ben Johnson feels about DeAndre Swift because I still feel like he had a When we look at total yards, he had a decent year. He caught the ball well. He ran the ball decently. He there was some weeks where he looked like an absolute menace. So I'm not ready to throw just Swift into like a box and just call him like a just a flex play. I think he's an adequate RB2 who can give you RB1 type weeks, right? If you think if you have DeAndre Swift as your RB1, I think that's the scary territory to have because he's very volatile and what he can give you per week, and it depends on how the Bears' offense is rolling, if everything's going with the way they need to. But when they're checking the ball down, or when he's very active in the passing game, that's when he has really nice weeks, or when he has really he breaks off those trunk runs. So uh, I like DeAndre Swift still, and then you got Truba Hubbard, Jalen Warren, Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers looked way better after he got traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars than he did with the Raiders. So we got to see how that 2026 goes, how the chemistry he builds upon with Trevor Lawrence goes. But he is somebody who I feel comfortable as my wide receiver 3. Could have some wide receiver 2 type weeks. Uh, Flex play, I think, is very much in that range of guys. But wide receiver 3 very comfortably with some wide receiver 2 type weeks. When you're looking at the guys, it looked like majority of that ninth round was running backs. We had some wide receivers come off the board as well, but that was like the running back sweet spot for your RB2s, your RB2s or flex positions or flex spots. Or when you're looking at that ninth round, Rocco, who was your favorite pick for value?
Probably Christian Watson. Um, Christian Watson has the ability to be a wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 to get in the ninth round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to be steamed up. The closer we get to real drafts, because right now he's just buried. So that's why you get him in the ninth round, because folks are like scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Oh, there's Christian Watson.
Yeah,
So that's why he's going so low. I think he's going to be going at least a round, maybe a round and a half earlier,
said is.
come real drafts. So yeah, I think that's the biggest value right here.
Yeah, I think you could argue of having Christian Watson ahead of DK Metcalf. You can argue with him being closely. I say where Michael Wilson is, where a you could even go to where Alec Pierce is. There's no reason why Alec Pierce went damn near. It looks like a full round, almost a round and a half before Christian Watson. If I'm being quite honest with you, so
Yeah,
I
yeah. Christian Watson is the high end. What Alec Pierce would look like if he got to his ceiling.
now the final 10th round. See, the final 10th round for this mock draft that we have, I feel like is almost a sweet spot for the to grab yourself if you're not one of those folks who like to go get a tight end early in drafts like myself. Is a spot where you could still end up having or getting yourself a tight end one. Jake Ferguson, even though he's not, when it comes to yardage, he's not that impressive. He still had, he was still, I believe, top 5 in receptions. When it comes to touchdowns, he was, I believe, top 7 or top 6, something like that for tight ends. You can still get yourself a pretty decent tight end in the 10th round with Rico Dotto starting off it to kick us off. Jake Ferguson, Hawkinson, I think fell off a bit, and also you got that Minnesota Vikings offense tax right there going against him. David Montgomery, Pearsall, Benson, depending on I don't know, he hasn't been able to stay healthy, so that kind of throwing me off with him. But Mark Andrews, I think for tight ends is going to have hella value, and somebody who I'm going to be very much picking in startup drafts or new startup drafts where I can get him because of the new landscape of that Baltimore Ravens offense. Now, I got to see so who's going to be the offensive play caller, but as long as Todd is out, Harbaugh is gone, something new or breath of fresh air is going to come about of that. And then Devontae Adams has gone later than what I've seen him typically in previous years in that mid to later round of the 10th. That could be due to him. One, he's getting older, and then with that hamstring injury that he ended up picking up, which I think honestly rubbed people the wrong way and had them, you know, thinking twice of having Adams on their team. Then you got Higgins, Goddard, and then Robinson and Shaheed to end out that 10th round, our final round at that. Rocco, speak on Devontae Adams, speak on Pearsall, the wide receivers that we saw come off this board, even Wandale Robinson, who had 1,000 yards last year for the Giants. Look, when you're looking at guys that came off in the 10th, what is something that you have noticed or something that you feel like you will take advantage of? For me, is with Mark Andrews being, for one, people being down on him. I think the 10th round is a great spot to get yourself a starting tight end. And then for a owner who doesn't go tight end early.
Um, Nothing really stood out too much. I like Pearsall. I've kind of purposely tried to avoid my picks because I know we'll talk about him at the end. Um, as a guy that could be a potential wide receiver one there. Um, Mandrews, he disappointed in 25. That's why you're getting such a good value. But like you said, there's a coaching change there, so hopefully he can be more utilized. Um, Adams, I mean, he's 33, but also
Mhm.
he was like a damn near top 8 wide receiver this year. But also, you know, is Stafford going to be there next year? What happens if he leaves? So there's questions there. Probably the guy that I'm most intrigued with on this whole list would probably be Jaden Higgins, just because when he plays, he's shown a lot of ability. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know why he didn't play more, throughout this year. But there's no way they can keep him off the field. He should be at least the number two there. And if something happens with Nico, he's going to be a top 12 option weekly. So to me, I think he's the most talented guy in that whole group. Maybe him and Pearsall.
Mhm.
Um, but there's definitely production there. Montgomery is interesting if he goes to a different team. It seems like his run with the Lions has come to an end. But I mean, it's the 10th round. Pick who you like at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And it depends really on how you feel. At this point, you're getting to where you're trying to fill out your roster, but also still get pretty good value, right? So unless somebody misses a player due to ADP of them being sucking down, I think at this point you're just looking to get the best value picks to set up your team in the right direction. But that was our first Dynasty mock draft of 2026 offseason 1.75 tight end premium 12 team. Honestly, I feel like I like my team that ended up having. Go here. Once again, I had Lamar Jackson, Drake London, James Cook, AJ Brown, King Henry, Waddle, Javante Williams, Michael Wilson, Shador Sanders, and Andrews. If I had to do anything differently in this draft, it might have been to go ahead and try to get my QB2 earlier.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
yeah,
you got you got a big question mark there.
yeah, a huge question mark. So I don't, Shador could end up being the answer in Cleveland. But if I, as somebody who goes into every year wanting to contend and win, uh, him as my QB2 would had me a little worried. That would be when I would go after this draft would be done. I would use my 2026 first to go ahead and try to acquire me a quarterback. Probably even pair in my second because if I'm not that high on this class, I would be just fine sending out my first and second for a Dak Prescott. I would feel just fine sending out my first and second for a Bo Nix if someone is down on him because of the injury. You shouldn't be because it was just a fracture, nothing torn or ligaments. Or I would even go to lengths of sending out a second rounder for a Malik Willis, who I think could end up being better value than that second rounder itself. I think that would be the move to make here. But that'll be the move. That's all the move that I'm looking at when looking at the final roster that I ended up selecting. And then our good guy Rocco here went Jaden Daniels, Justin Jefferson, Brock Purdy, Brian Thomas Jr., Amika Ibuka, Higgins, T. Higgins, Cam Scatterbo, Malik Willis, Alvin Kamara, and Ricky Pearsall. Is there anything that you would change about your team, Rocco?
I think I mentioned it. I would have probably went Puka at 8. And then I'm probably looking at the best wide receiver group in this whole league. So that's probably the direction I would have changed.
Mhm.
But I like the fact that I waited on running back and still got two absolute studs. I got my three quarterbacks. So if this is a league that will trade for quarterback, like your team, if Shador Sanders don't,
Mhm.
if Shador Sanders don't hit like you want, you're a possible trade candidate or trade partner.
Yep.
Even though I don't think you would trade with me because
It depends.
Huncho leaves me on red on all my trade attempts.
It depends, man. I've been I actually cleared out some of my messages.
Huncho says, "What do you know? I ain't trading with you, you son of a bitch."
Yeah, sometimes I always feel when you trade with people that you know, and I feel like it's like you trying to because you both not to say you're both trying to win the trade, but at the same time you're like, all right, I got this in front of me. Do I really want to take this? And then you kind of try to toss out the because you know them bias on it. You know what I'm saying? So how
It's
about
cool. Max won't trade with me either. So
it would depend. I know. No, I
Max
know.
will talk shit about a player for weeks, like Jalen Polk, um, talking shit about him all year, like he's the worst fucking player. He hates him, and then I send him a third for Polk, and he's like, "I think I'll hold on to him. What do you know?"
Hey man, shout out to our boy Max, man. Yeah, that does sound like
He
kind
would,
of
he would, he's like, "I'll take a first."
no. He said
Come on,
that
bro.
reminded me of a conversation I had with him one time when I tried to go get Cedric Tillman. He said I'm gonna hold him right now. I was like, I felt that one. So you hit that one right on the head. But that is our first rookie, our first not rookie, but our first startup dynasty mock draft. Rocco, before we get up out of here, is there a particular team that was your favorite that you can't choose your own, but who team happens who to be your favorite out of this mock draft?
Um, I'll have to go. I really like Addy's team.
Hmm.
Um, it's not quite my build, but it is intriguing. I like the quarterbacks. He's got Saquon Barkley as his running back four,
Hmm.
um, and he faded tight end like I did. I didn't even pick one in the first 10 rounds. His receivers got some question marks, but the rest of that team, that rest of his team really can compete. Besides him, Austin probably has the most win now team. Um, you know, outside of Marvin Harrison, it's well documented how I feel about Marv, so I'm not going to even go there. But if he hits the top, most likely scenario for all of these players,
Hmm.
and they stay healthy, he looks like the team that's most ready to compete for a championship in 2026.
I like it, man. And then if I'm had to choose, I would say California Five Cool ended up with one of my favorite ones with Brock Bowers, Go Dogs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, CJ Stroud, and then you go with Trevion Henderson, Bruce Irvin. Sorry, not Bruce Irvin. But
Bruce.
I always mess up with that. I always mess up with that. Bucky, Bruce. Bucky Irvin, Cam Ward, Alec Pearson, Jordan Addison. I think with Pearson Addison, if things go right, you could end up having a pretty solid wide receiver core to go with a young running back core, and then you still end up with a starting tight end with two starting tight ends at that, and a tight end premium league. I think California Five had a really good draft for sure. And that is our show for today. Part two of our latest mock draft. We have more mock drafts to do this season with 14 teams, 15 teams. I actually want to try out some different, have some different rules in here, like RB premiums and things in that nature. I think that turns a twist. I'm in a mock draft that has rookies included, so that has turned a twist into it. So the off season is still young. We still have more content to give y'all. We still have more guests to come on the show. We still have more ideas to give you. Appreciate everybody that has tuned in so far. Remember to join our Discord that we have in the YouTube description. Find us on Twitter. Find us on TikTok. And we got more in store for you. But we are always your fantasy playbook. Two more championship wins. And Rocco, where are we the land of, my G?
We are a fantasy football podcast for Dynasty Sickos by Dynasty Sickos. Let's watch some football.
Let's watch some damn football. Hope everyone enjoys their Sunday. Hope if you have a parlay out there that you hit. If you don't, stop gambling. It's bad for you. Till next till next time. This is Fourth and Fantasy. Y'all take care. And this is Lead Champ, where you can win a free NFL jersey by being the number one ranker. Till next time, I'm Honcho, and this is my guy, Rock.
Rocco.